looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Historic resolution at the United Nations General Assembly mean for the CARICOM reparations movement? All back to Lead Story Prime. I'm Giovanni Dennis. Joining me now, Government Senator Marlon Morgan and Jeanette Calder, Executive Director of the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal. Thank you both so much for joining us. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Senator.
Hi, good evening, Jeanette. Good evening, Giovanni. Thanks for having me.
All right. So let's start straight. Let's get your initial reactions to the response of the People's National Party. Senator Morgan, we saw a release from you very early this morning criticizing the response so far. Why?
Essentially, we believe, all things considered, that the response that we have had from both Dennis Gordon insofar as his Sunday Observer exposition of sorts, and the response as well by way of Sunday evening's press release from the opposition leader and PNP President Mark Golding. Essentially unfortunate. Mark Golding has acted quite belatedly, and where Dennis Gordon, the man on the bridge, as it were, is concerned, we find that he's being wrong and strong. Wrong and strong in that at all material points in time, Dennis Gordon would have or ought to have been seized of the fact that one of the referenced companies in that now infamous Auditor General report was in fact his Jackden Limited. And of course, Dennis Gordon, we believe, has been playing for time, and it was only on the eve, reportedly, of the PAC committee's meeting that Dennis Gordon apparently made the payment that is now being bandied about as a payment that he has made.
Let us, since you brought up that, Senator Morgan, let us go to this overview by Amoy Harriet, just to put things into perspective for our viewers in terms of how did we get here. Here's Amoy Harriet.
All started in January of this year when a performance audit on the University Hospital of the West Indies was tabled in Parliament. That audit uncovered serious gaps in the hospital's governance, procurement and contract processes, including missing documentation for over $521 million in contracts and the misuse of UAE's tax-exempt status to import goods for private companies. The report noted that the hospital didn't provide full procurement records for dozens of contracts and showed that the tax exemption meant to help the hospital itself was used to bring in equipment and supplies for private entities. Now, one of the companies flagged in the audit was Jackden Group of Companies, which provides services to UAE and whose chairman is Dennis Gordon, a member of Parliament for the People's National Party (PNP). Since then, responses have been mixed and highly political. Jackden has said its work with UAE is compliant, that the Auditor General's report didn't name Jackden as causing or directing any breaches, and that suggestions otherwise are misunderstandings of the audit's contents. The PNP has said it hasn't seen any breaches in the law by Jackden or Mr. Gordon. Now, both the Jamaica Labour Party and its young professional arm, Young Jamaica, has taken a much tougher line, calling for Gordon's immediate resignation and questioning the PNP's handling of the matter. Dennis Gordon himself has rejected calls for his resignation, insisting that there has been no finding of criminality against him or his company, and dismissing calls for his resignation as motivated by party politics. Now, beyond the political back and forth, other voices have weighed in as well. The Integrity Commission has now launched its own probe into the procurement and tax-exempt issues flagged by the audit, and the major organized crime and anti-corruption agency has been gathering statements from staff. Civil society groups like the Jamaica Council of Churches have called for meaningful accountability and transparent investigations, warning that weak governance in public institutions undermines trust and public services. Now, the PNP has removed Gordon from the Public Accounts Committee and the Shadow Cabinet pending investigations. It's back to you, Gio.
All right, thank you so much for that report, Amoy. Let's go straight to Jeanette Calder. Jeanette Calder, Dennis Gordon has said, as quoted in The Observer, and he says calls for his resignation are being done for political reasons, as there was no finding of corruption or criminality by his company or himself. This is a part of what he told The Observer, and we'll go to a little bit more. But what do you make of that as a civil society watchdog group? How do you respond to what he has said?
I think MP Gordon has a right, like every citizen does, to mount a defense. He is in a situation where his integrity and his company is being called into question. And so he has every right to have shared his point of view with The Observer and with the public. The challenge Jam would have, however, is that MP Gordon can't clear himself. And therefore, our perspective is that we have to, first of all, honor the work that the Auditor General has done, recognize that these are findings that are not, pulled out of the air and out of the vacuum. These are usually findings that come from an audit that is depending on documentation, referencing the law, seeing where there are gaps and advising the Parliament and the people, and that's what the Auditor General has done. But we recognize, Giovanni, that this is an audit, not a criminal investigation. So as your lead-up said a while ago, the matter has now been transferred to another government entity where they will get into the issue of whether there were any criminal acts on the part of Jack Den or its principals. And we will just have to wait that.
And when you say another entity, by that you mean the major organized
cannot.
By the other
major organized, yes. And there are several, by the way. MOCA could take this on, the Integrity Commission could take this on, the FID. There are several. I mean, Jamaicans cannot complain about a government and a parliament that has provided enough accountability institutions to take this on. The bottom line is that Mr. Gordon cannot clear himself, and that's where we would leave that.
When you were speaking just now, you said we need to honor the Auditor General's report. Do you think the response so far is honoring the report, or if not, what do you mean by honor the report? Just for clarity.
Well, thank you for allowing me to clarify that, Gio. The Auditor General of Jamaica does not, contrary to what MP Gordon says, the Auditor General doesn't sanction, doesn't impose penalties, and they certainly don't try to determine criminality. So insofar as the Auditor General has found breaches, I don't think that Mr. Gordon is denying that. He's heading down the pipeline to say he has not done anything that's criminal. And so I'm saying we're going to honor what the Auditor General and their team has found out and allow that relay to take place where criminal investigations are now taking place.
Right. I should say we are upon, I hear you, Senator Morgan, I'm coming back to you, but we are upon our first break. But before we go to the break, we should make it clear we did invite Dennis Gordon to appear on this program. We didn't get a response. We also invited other representatives from the People's National Party. They all declined or didn't respond to us, to our request. So just to make that clear, when we come back, though, we'll be hearing a little bit more of the report or the information that Dennis Gordon shared with the Jamaica Observer. We'll also hear a little bit more from that statement from the People's National Party President Mark Golding. But we are talking about this very controversial UHWI tax exemption abuse.
Can you do this?
I'm me, the style is no scam and style me.
From the market to the farm to the office, money talk is everywhere. But are you making sense or nonsense? The Bank of Jamaica brings you common sense with BOJ. Real stories, real laughs, and real lessons to help you protect, grow, and manage your money. Mattress savings.
At least my mattress, you charge me to sleep on it.
Partner plan.
Remember last year we needed our payouts early? But Miss Pam gave it to her cousin first.
Or a sketchy loan flyer.
Electrifying deals.
See why making the right financial choices is pure common sense. Brought to you by Bank of Jamaica, empowering everyday Jamaicans one episode at a time.
Grandpa, it's 2026. You can't keep hiding all your money in every single pocket forever.
So welcome back to Lead Story Prime. I'm Giovanni Dennis. We're talking about the UHWI performance audit report by the Auditor General, flagging concerns about abuse of its tax-exempt status. With us is Government Senator Marlon Morgan and Executive Director of the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, Jeanette Calder. Let's go to this. This is a part of what Dennis Gordon told the Observer. We had Amoy Harriet voice over a couple of the sentences that he told the Observer. Let's listen in.
Quote, they reached out to me and said I should pay approximately $10.1 million, which I paid. So what is the crime? My only crime is my success and that I am a PNP member of Parliament. End quote.
Senator Morgan, against that background and against what the People's National Party president has said, and we'll go to that in just a moment, are your comments playing politics? Your calls for his resignation?
First of all, I find that salvo a bit laughable. Dennis Gordon knows full well that as players in the political arena, we are essentially check and balance on each other in as much as the opposition scrutinizes government. We too seek to ensure that the opposition is not engaged in hypocrisy, nor are they being politically expedient, which they are being in this instance, because if you consider the gravamen of the arguments put forward by Dennis Gordon, he is essentially engaged in sophistry. He is essentially seeking to muddy the waters, and he's trying to deflect. And I'll just unpack that quickly for the benefit of your listeners and viewers. The long and short of it is that Dennis Gordon knows that Auditor General's work was not aimed at his company. He's a private sector player, and as such, the Auditor General treats with entities that expend public resources, such as the UHWI. So there was no finding that was going to be made in relation to criminal trespassing or liability, or indeed him being cited adversely in this report. It is for the work of other competent authorities, as Jeanette mentioned in her opening contribution, that will ferret out those matters. So what is clear is that Dennis Gordon's company brought in items. We see an invoice making the rounds. It was also in the Sunday Gleaner some weeks ago, where items to include dialysis machines, or what I believe are dialysis machines, are essentially shipped to the UHWI. Now, if, as Dennis Gordon is saying, that his company brought items into the country and they were in country at the point when he reached out to the UHWI, why would an invoice from the vendor in question here say that the items are being shipped to and billed to the UHWI with a 18 and 3/4 Lyndhurst Road address being situated on that invoice? It doesn't add up. And Dennis Gordon is seeking to draw a red herring across the trail here. And Mark Golding, who obfuscated at that January 26, 2026 press conference that the PNP held, needs to tell the country when he knew of this development. He needs to indicate clearly to us whether Dennis Gordon misled him, because we know that two things cannot simultaneously be true. It is the same Dennis Gordon, Giovanni, and Jeanette that instructed his attorneys to write to both TVJ and the Nationwide News Network. He sought to intimidate them and trespass on their press freedom by way of that missive from his attorneys.
I want to go to what Mark Golding said in his statement, and we had Amoy Harriet voice it, just so that we put everything in context so our viewers are fully appreciative of what we're talking about here. Let's hear from Amoy's reading of the statement by Mark Golding.
The statement says, quote, based on the facts made available to me, I have seen nothing to suggest that Jack Den has broken any law. Furthermore, Mr. Gordon has, as is appropriate, recused himself from the Public Accounts Committee hearings considering this matter. Nevertheless, this situation with Jack Den has emerged in the public domain within the context of the many serious findings of maladministration at UHWI in the Auditor General's report. I believe it is essential we consistently demonstrate our party's commitment to high standards of probity in public affairs and due respect for the spirit of the Leadership Code of Conduct that our MPs and senators have all signed. I have therefore decided that Mr. Gordon should step aside from the Public Accounts Committee and the Shadow Cabinet with immediate effect, pending the completion of ongoing investigations, and to allow the Party's Integrity Commission to look into the matter closely and provide its recommendations. The situation will then be reviewed. In coming to this decision, I wish to reiterate that I am not aware of anything which suggests Mr. Gordon or Jack Den has breached any law. Furthermore, Jack Den's dialysis machines are now providing life-saving services to Jamaica's renal patients at a lower cost than otherwise available in the marketplace. Nevertheless, it is the nature of public life that we must sometimes take a stance, demonstrating adherence to rigorous standards of accountability, especially given that Jamaica is suffering from an environment where such standards are sadly lacking. End quote.
All right, thanks so much. So he has asked Dennis Gordon to step aside from the PAC and the Shadow Cabinet. Isn't this what the JLP wanted, Senator Morgan? What more
Let's be very clear, Giovanni. The opposition leader's response is quite belated. This thing has been in the space for months now, and it is just now that he has seen it fit to have Dennis Gordon recused from Parliament's PAC and, of course, step aside from his mark-holding Shadow Cabinet. Just to be very clear, the opposition leader knows full well that Dennis Gordon is someone who competent authorities are now investigating in relation to whether crimes were indeed committed, because such pieces of legislation as the Customs Act, which is germane here, are relevant. Other tax laws and perhaps even the Proceeds of Crime Act may be relevant here. Those are determinations for the investigative bodies to make. So we in the Jamaica Labour Party find it quite premature and hasty on the part of opposition leader Mark Golding for him to be proffering that he has not seen where any crime has been committed by Jack Den. On what basis is he making that declaration? Allow the investigative bodies to do their work, because what we know at a minimum is that Dennis Gordon could not have had a situation where items were brought into country by his company, but yet the invoice in relation to those items are bearing UHWI's name. And essentially, the public purse was deprived of financial resources that ought properly to have flowed to it. And that is what Mark Golding has to reconcile himself with. In that press release on Sunday, Easter Sunday of all days, he was essentially speaking out of both sides of his mouth, trying to, on the one hand, defend Dennis Gordon, and on the other hand, appear to us in the public as though he's taking action.
For you, Jeanette Calder, hold a second, Senator Morgan. For you, Jeanette Calder, he has taken him away, step aside, removed him from the PAC and the Shadow Cabinet. Is that sufficient?
You're mute, Janet. You're mute.
Thank you, Senator. Yes. For now, yes, this was Jam's call, and I do agree with Senator Morgan. It was belated. I have to admit that when these decisions take such a long time to come into play, it forces the public to question the sincerity behind it. And so I really support Senator Morgan in saying, if you're going to lead, you have to be doing it out front. Now, as it relates to what more can be done, Senator,
I'm so sorry, Jeanette, but delayed in his action, Jack Den wasn't named in the report by the Auditor General, wasn't named directly in it.
That is correct. But here's where I think the leader of the opposition is not just a member of the public such as I. This information comes through a source, whether I think the source is credible or not. The point is that a media house brought to the fore the fact that Jack Den was company number 2. I would imagine with that coming into the public space and domain, the leader of the opposition would have a conversation with the member of parliament to determine whether or not this is true. I mean, that could be the first step that the party leader would have to take. Is this true or is it not? And I think the mere fact that in the days and the weeks that followed that speculation that it was in fact Jack Den, when we heard absolutely nothing coming from the PNP, most people, Giovanni, would have come to the conclusion that if it was not the case, then something would have been said in the public domain and we were correct. Nothing was said and it was the case. Now, the PAC met what? 1 month later, I didn't hear anything coming out of the PAC that put the party leader in a better position to take what I think is a principled stand. And I'll close off by saying this. JAM's position as an organization and my own as a citizen is simply this. Whenever there's a cloud of judgment over a public official or a parliamentarian in particular, that causes there to weaken public trust in that person, that causes to weaken public perception or public confidence. I really believe, Giovanni, there's really only one option open to that person until a report comes out that clears him, and that is out of respect and regard for the people you serve and you put a pledge to. You step aside until you have been cleared and you will be reinstated. I've seen it
I'm so sorry, Jeanette, but Customs is one of the entities investigating the Integrity Commission. These entities may take a time to do to complete their investigations. Isn't it unfair to have this over his head when he is insisting he has done nothing wrong?
Well, let me address that. And I'm not a lawyer, but if there's one thing I know to be true, Giovanni, is that ignorance is not an excuse of the law. I said it to another media host this week very simply. The first thing coming out of the MP's explanation was that I am not, and I believe him, I am not in charge of the day-to-day affairs of this company. The bottom line, notwithstanding that, is you are a majority shareholder. You derive benefits from it when the correct decisions are made. Therefore, when decisions are made that are inimical to your interests, you also have to accept responsibility. Now, Giovanni, MP Gordon said that himself in the interview with the Observer, that he has to take responsibility. My position is this. This might sound away, but I am not putting the MP's concern first. I am putting the concerns of the people of Jamaica. And there might be something unfair about it if he is in fact innocent. But we don't know that. So to ask the people of Jamaica to have somebody sitting on a committee that is responsible for the very same exact thing that a cloud is over him, which is mismanagement of public funds and public resources and assets, I'm going to put the people's interests first, and I'm going to say it is unfair to the people of Jamaica to ask them to put up with that. That's how I would answer that question. And in all honesty, if I were that MP, if I were in that very same situation, what I would say, Giovanni, is that this is really not fair. But I understand why I would need to step aside.
We are upon the break right now in 30 seconds from the both of you, starting with you, Jeanette, and then to you, Senator Morgan. What needs to happen now?
Well, in regard to MP, the specific matter with Jack then?
Yes.
Well, I don't know that there's anything else to happen. We have seen the call we've made. The party leader has responded. I really think we just have to be patient, as you said a while ago, and allow the state agencies to do what they have to do. I don't know there's anything else that we should do. The man is innocent until he's really proven guilty.
Yeah. For you, Senator Morgan?
What is germane here is the aggregate of the aggravating actions on the part of Dennis Gordon. This is a man who knew that his company was one of those being indicated or referenced by the Auditor General. He strung Jamaica, including apparently his own party leader, along for several weeks and indeed months. He knew that his company had brought in dialysis machines. He knew that there was an invoice that essentially set out sums, and there was no tax paid on those invoices because while the machines were billed to the UHWI and so on, they were delivered to his premises. So he knew that that was indeed false customs declarations. And the truth of the matter is that where that is concerned, Dennis Gordon's entity has erred, and whether he ought to have known of these things. And what is particularly damning here is that he instructed his attorneys to write to media houses in circumstances where they did their due diligence and had ferreted out by whatever means that his company, Jatney Limited, was indeed one of the four referenced. When those things are taken together, Giovanni and viewers, it is clear that Dennis Gordon has to look into himself now and realize that in doubling down and being wrong and strong, essentially with those things that came out in the Observer article on Sunday, that his position is perhaps untenable as MP, and he needs to reconsider his incumbency as a lawmaker, because someone who is so flippant about something that is so grave in nature has to
Senator
really
Morgan,
reconsider.
I'm so sorry, we are entirely out of time. We do have to take a break now. When we come back, we'll be switching topics. I just want to say thank you to both Government Senator Marlon Morgan and the Executive Director of the Jamaica Accountability Meter Portal, Jeanette Calder. Thank you both so much for joining us for this very important and ongoing discussion, the fallout from the Auditor General's performance audit of the University Hospital of the West Indies and its abuse of its tax-exempt status. Stay with us. When we come back, another very important issue. The United Nations has officially recognized the transatlantic slave trade in the with African people as the gravest crime against humanity. We'll get reaction
into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins, and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes. Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winford Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
To Lead Story Prime, I'm Giovanni Dennis sitting in for Jody and Quarry. Now, the CARICOM Reparations Commission held a media briefing this morning to respond to the recent United Nations General Assembly resolution recognizing the trafficking and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. The Commission's chair, Sir Hilary Beckles, said at the briefing that the resolution has laid the foundation for a dialogue on decency. He also said the CARICOM Reparations Commission wants to see an international summit to discuss the issue. The resolution led by Ghana was adopted on March 25, which is recognized as the International Day of Remembrance of the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. Now, joining us to discuss this issue, we have Robin Jerry Small in studio. He is a historian and a public affairs broadcaster. Andrew McDaniel on Zoom, assistant lecturer in the Department of Government at the University of the West Indies, Mona campus. But first, let's hear this overview by Carla Ramdeen, who was monitoring the press briefing by the CARICOM Reparations Commission this morning.
Chairman of the CARICOM Reparations Commission, Sir Hilary Beckles, says the Commission is satisfied with the recent decision. Professor Beckles noted that the global support for reparative justice has significantly strengthened over the past 25 years, adding that the issue is now being placed in the proper context of human development.
This has been a reality that we have been calling upon the world to endorse since 2001, and CARICOM has every good reason to be satisfied that we have been able to bring the best of humanity along the trajectory so that we can recognize this crime as it certainly was. We wish to express gratitude, of course, to the joint leadership in Ghana and CARICOM. We're very proud of the leadership provided by President Mahama of Ghana and his team. We're very proud of the leadership provided by Prime Minister Mayor Motsi of Barbados, who is the chair of the Reparations Commission's prime ministerial leadership of the CARICOM Reparations Commission.
Addressing countries that voted against the declaration, Chairman of the Antigua and Barbuda Reparations Support Commission, Dobrin Omard, suggests their position may be due to what he describes as historical amnesia, an absence of morality, and a sense of false innocence.
What the UN declaration does is that it adds a moral dimension to the existing international legal frameworks. Those frameworks that we know, the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, and certainly the declarations of Durban in 2001, those declarations essentially that declared slavery as a crime against humanity. And so we now have this moral imposition, the moral dimension to this.
Looking ahead, Professor Beckles reveals that CARICOM will host a major international conference on reparation in the region this year. The event is expected to bring together global voices as part of the next phase of the movement. The Commission also plans to visit Europe to continue dialogue with the European public.
Let's start with you, Jerry Small. How significant was this resolution by the United Nations, firstly?
Well, at least it's an acknowledgement by a wider group of the world community that this thing happened and is the greatest crime against humanity in history, and that it is still relevant now because those who dominate the world for the most part, they came to domination as a result and product of slavery. Slavery is what slavers do. That's what slavery means. My people are no slaves. They were enslaved. We are Africans, and the various people that have been enslaved by slavers. And the first form of slavery was the ownership of the females of our family by the males. We started it by enslaving the females, and we thought it was right. Something still is right. And all human beings come out of Africa and spread around the world. All human beings. Enslavement started in Africa and it continued right around the world. And the traders who made deals with the European slavers were some of our relatives, but they were the elite of the society. Not all of the elite, the elite, the top people in the society, the chiefs, the military leaders, the business people in West Africa made deals, not all of them, made deals with the Europeans and traded. And when the Europeans went and started to carry textiles and cloth and beads there and get money for them gold, after a while they say, okay, we want some Africans to enslave, and some of the society people, after tribal wars, they would take the prisoners and sell them into slavery, or the society people would enslave the ordinary people. And the British had to now giving up back the gold that they got for the textile. After they said, no man, we're not going to give up this gold. We're going to print a paper promissory note. That's all so-called money. This thing that you have in your pocket is not money. Promissory note to avoid the British having to let go back off of the gold.
All right. For you, Andrew McDaniel, you were here on another topic during the budget debate, and I remember, I think on the actual day when this announcement was made, you're like, a damn thing I want to talk about in a jail. Here we are now. I did promise you that we want to look at this very important issue. Could this be seen, though, as another symbolic act without in much meaning or action to back it up, though?
No. So, to clarify, the declaration itself has no real legal implications for many of the countries who signed on to it. That's number one. But it's not just dressing up the story and some sort of aesthetic move to recognize the human trafficking of enslaved Africans as something that's going to be decorative, right? This move firmly places the issue of reparatory justice on the international agenda. So it's not just something that's to be seen as decorative. It's a very significant move, and I want to point out that the matter of reparations is not new. It's something that countries have been calling for, since the independence period for many African states and for many Caribbean states, ever since the 1960s all the way up until the conference in Durban in 2001, countries have been making the call for reparation. And this is, of course, another significant step. Now, as Sir Hilary Beckles pointed out, what it does, it lays the foundation. Now, by itself, this declaration won't trigger any sort of significant response from other countries to make any sort of reparatory payments to these African states or to the Caribbean states. But what it will do, though, is it will motivate for more countries to have the conversation surrounding reparatory justice and ensuring that some of the requirements or some of the proposals that we have presented to the UN and to some of these European states, that they at least acknowledge them, starting off firstly with a full formal apology, because we have yet to receive that full formal apology, with the exception of the Netherlands, and we're still waiting on many of these states to at least acknowledge the crime that was committed.
All right, so we are upon our first break. I do want to touch a little bit more on that point about reparations and just how does this advance the discussion and the conversation around the call for reparation. We're talking to historian Robin Jerry Small and assistant lecturer in the Department of Government at the University of the West Indies, Andrew McDaniel, about this historic move by the United Nations acknowledging the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. Stay with us. More when we come back.
Change does not happen overnight. It takes vision, commitment, and courage to reform.
So we created a number of executive agencies, which I believe, and I can say, having left this thing, was one of the most successful initiatives undertaken in the reform process.
But transformation isn't easy.
We found in several ministries, agencies, and departments, you had square pegs in round holes.
You could almost say that public sector transformation is not a JLP policy, it's not a PNP policy. It is national policy.
There was political willingness, there was bipartisan support for going through with the reforms, there was societal support, a lot of societal sacrifices. People of Jamaica made a lot of sacrifices. And businesses, the private sector, everybody was engaged in this journey.
We want to continue to reform the public sector, to allow the public sector to provide its services to the Jamaican people, provide services to the private sector. And the idea is that those services must be more accessible. Those services must be more affordable. Those services must be faster. They must be more personable and comfortable for the citizen.
Watch Building a Better Public Sector, a 4-part docuseries right here on CVM, commencing April 5 and aired every Sunday in April at 3 p.m. Brought to you by the Transformation Implementing.
To Lead Story Prime, I'm Giovanni Dennis sitting in for Jody and Quarry. We're talking about the historic vote by the United Nations to recognize the transatlantic slave trade as the gravest crime against humanity. And before the break, Andrew McDaniel was making the point that this takes us further along the reparations debate or the reparations conversation. How so, Andrew McDaniel?
Well, firstly, the move for reparatory justice is something that's seen as significant because, one, it recognizes the atrocities that were committed against us as enslaved Africans during the period of the transatlantic slave trade. And just to point out as well, calling it a slave trade legitimized as a practice, so we want to change our language and say that it's a trafficking of enslaved Africans. But reparatory justice simply means that we want to reconcile that version of history, whereas we suffered greatly over 3 to 4 centuries. Now, what reparations mean for us is that, firstly, you want to acknowledge the crime that was committed because it's still a crime. Whether or not slavery was legal during that period, it's still a crime that was committed against enslaved Africans. You want to acknowledge that by fully and formally apologizing, which many European countries have avoided from doing so. And then further, you want to take it a step further by acknowledging how these European countries, through slavery, contributed to underdevelopment in many of these African states and Caribbean states. And you want to fix some of those issues of underdevelopment, such as illiteracy, and also some of the socio-economic issues that we're dealing with currently in our states.
For you, Jerry Small, Sir Hilary Beckles spoke about the idea that this move lays the foundation for a conversation on decency. Do you agree with that?
Conversation of decency in humanity or amongst who?
For him, it's the decent thing to do. Yes. He says. Do you agree that this move lays the foundation for that?
Yes, and it's a people movement. Reparations does not matter to the government of Jamaica. It's the people of Jamaica that reparations matter to. And both parties have the same attitude.
Which is?
That, forget it. Remember, even Portia Simpson Miller, she never wanted to deal with it. And when she was finally pressed, she agreed with the Prime Minister of England, who said, get over it, we will send you some money to build some prisons. Now, did you know that Rwanda took the deal that the
people like Olivia Grange will disagree with you that they don't. People like Olivia Babsy Grange will disagree with you that they don't support the call for reparations.
No, it's a hypocritical talk. It's a hypocritical talk. The government of Jamaica, both parties, and more so this one, which is a puppet of the United States of America, more than Trinidad. They are a puppet more than the Prime Minister of Trinidad. And you have to differentiate between the people of Jamaica and the government of Jamaica. You have to differentiate between the people of America and the government of America. The people of America are not backing what the government of America. And most countries in the world, you have to differentiate between the people and the government. Most of the governments are servants of the rich and the international. Now hear this now. The proposal by Ghana in the United Nations the other day was a smoke screen. The day after Ghana made that glorious and celebrated move, they made an agreement, almost secretly with some European countries, to come into Ghana and carry out surveillance and subversion against their neighbors. Now this is the government, the elite of Ghana. It was the elite of the Western African countries that sold out prisoners of war and some of their own people. It's always the elites that sell out people up to now. Most places in the world you have to differentiate between the government. Now, Rwanda took the deal. The same deal that the Prime Minister of England said, we'll send some money to you to build some prisons, but we're not giving a reparation. You know why? It's a mass deportation that Jamaica he was planning, and you build the prisons and receive the prisoners and you get some money. Rwanda took that deal. Did you know that? Rwanda took the deal that all of the black people that were coming through Europe, there was mass migration through the 2000s, the blacks will be turned back. 5 plane flights a day have been provided for the blacks to be flown back immediately to Rwanda. Rwanda built some prisons and they got $5 billion and more. And they receive those prisoners, keep them for 5 years. After 5 years, if they decide that they want to become a prisoner of Rwanda, they stay there. If they don't decide to become a citizen of Rwanda, they are deported to the country of origin.
So Small,
Rwanda took that deal.
Let's just kind of refocus for this particular conversation on the issue of reparations. It was said at the briefing this morning that we have to be prepared for pushback from countries of former enslavers. Already we're seeing Britain saying, listen, we shouldn't be asked to pay any reparations because it was us who abolished slavery. So already we're seeing that kind of pushback. How do you react to that?
They abolished slavery not because of righteousness. The enslavement of our people provided a lot of prosperity and surplus wealth, which provided the research and the development of machines, which what resulted in the Industrial Revolution. You know what the Industrial Revolution is? When human beings find out that you can make machines to assist in any kind of work. Once the Industrial Revolution was created and you can build anything to help with work, they now need customers. So they let go the enslaved people and force them to work for wages, not money, for paper, to buy back the same products that they are making. The Industrial Revolution was facilitated by enslavement, and they abolished slavery not because of any righteousness, but to have customers. And when you work, especially the people working for minimum wage, they are paid less than quarter of the wealth that they are producing. They are paid a minimum wage, and they buy back the same products that they manufacture for inflated prices. That's how the system works. Industrial Revolution and capitalism.
For you, Andrew McDaniel, 123 countries voted for the resolution, 3 against, 52 abstained. Doesn't the fact that the United States Israel and Argentina, and voted against the resolution, and 52 countries, including the United Kingdom, abstained. Doesn't this show just how difficult it will be to move forward on this?
Yeah, what it points to is a broader issue, that there is still not a consensus on the issue that is the enslavement of Africans. Now, some of the reasons provided by the US, flawed of course. Now, for one, the logistical reason provided by them is that, listen, they took too long to present this resolution. But two, they're saying that we are creating a hierarchy of crimes, whereas we're now acknowledging slavery or the trafficking of enslaved Africans as the gravest crime committed against humanity. But the truth is, and we don't want to make any comparisons here, but the truth is, over 4 centuries, it's reasonable enough for us to consider it the gravest crime committed against humanity. But the issue that you're taking with that is that I believe that many of these countries still don't acknowledge and recognize Afro-descendants as humans, because a part of the institution of slavery was stripping us of our agency and humanity. Now, it's significant that these countries have identified themselves from very early, so that we know that the persons who are culpable still don't see themselves as being culpable for slavery. Now, the countries who abstained, it's very important that you know that all European Union countries, all the members of the European Union, they abstained from voting. And it's not so much them not taking a position on it or taking a position of indifference. It's more so them strategically distancing themselves from the move, because they acknowledge that in them agreeing with it being the gravest crime against humanity, they now have to take some sort of responsibility. So I believe a part of the mission or a part of the movement now is convincing many of these countries that, listen, the first step in the process is acknowledging the wrong. Even if your generation is not culpable for it, you still, as a state, as an institution, have to acknowledge the wrong that was committed against Afro-descendants during the 14th to the 19th century.
I mean, you mentioned the European bloc kind of strategically pulling away. So how does CARICOM now build on this historic move and the resolution?
Well, with their CARICOM Reparations Commission and the 10-point plan, so what CARICOM can do is to continue to push the agenda in institutions such as the United Nations. Now, I want to commend Ghana, of course, their Foreign Affairs Minister and their President for forming this coalition and pushing the move at the UN. And CARICOM can take a page out of the book in this, because CARICOM was a part of the movement, but it's time for us now to lead the cause for reparation, because we suffered greatly too as well.
Yeah.
We suffered greatly too as well. So CARICOM can now continue to move further by ensuring that the movement for reparation is now materialized into some of the proposals that they have asked for in the 10-point plan.
Very small.
Mr. McDaniel, are you aware of the move that Ghana made almost immediately, facilitating some European countries to infiltrate through Ghana into the intelligence and the security of the surrounding people in African nations? You're aware of that the next day that happened? You're aware of it?
So,
no, are you aware of it? No, are you aware of it? Are you aware of it?
So I want to point out something.
No, I want to ask if you are aware of it.
The only countries that can participate in an international forum are the states and the government. Now, I understand what you're saying about Ghana's deal, but the problem is that we're failing to acknowledge that these countries made a significant step on an international forum to recognize this very significant issue. Now, granted, I acknowledge the issue you're trying to point out in terms of the move that Ghana's government made afterwards, but we still have to commend them for the significant step taken towards this movement on an international stage.
I'm asking you if you are aware
hold a second.
of the infiltration through Ghana of the security of the surrounding nation.
Hold
a second,
hold a second, Mr. Small. Just to point out the 10-point plan by the CARICOM Reparations Commission that you mentioned, Andrew McDaniel. The first of these 10 point plans is a full formal apology 1, 2, reparation 3, indigenous peoples development program 4, cultural institutions 5, public health crisis as in addressing these issues 6, illiteracy eradication 7, African knowledge program 8, psychological rehabilitation 9, technology transfer, and 10, debt cancellation. I mean, we are just about out of time right now, but I just want to
say something else.
Quickly, Mr. Small.
The government of Jamaica, both parties, especially this one, the administration here is most hypocritical and deceitful, and even with the Rastafari, who they are tricking and they are soft-sawing some of the so-called elders and representatives through this Coral Gardens thing and through the so-called legalization of ganja. which is a little way to set up certain people in a business and to control the ganja trade. They are most hypocritical and they are most deceptive, especially these so-called cultural ministers. See, I got coached all of them.
We are out of time, Mr. Small, but finally, if you could just answer this question for me. Do you think we'll see reparatory justice in our lifetime?
Yes, we will secure it. We the people, not the government of Jamaica going to secure it. We the people of Jamaica.
For you, Andrew McDaniel, is this going to span generations or do you believe we'll see it in our lifetime?
We'll see efforts made and continue in our lifetime, but I believe the other generation, the future generation, they will also see movements towards separation as well. I believe our generation will see the conversation furthered, especially among the countries most culpable, and hopefully in my lifetime, I can witness the full formal apology made especially by a country such as Britain.
All right.
The government of Jamaica is planning to wipe out
Mr. Small, I cannot verify
some of the people that they have created. Some of the same youngsters.
I don't know that statement, Mr. Small. We are entirely out of time. Let's just say we disassociate ourselves with that statement that Jerry Small just made. But we are entirely out of time here on Lead Story Prime. We were having a conversation about that historic resolution at the United Nations recognizing the trafficking of enslaved Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. Thank you so much, historian Robin Jerry Small and assistant lecturer in the Department of Government at the University of the West Indies, Andrew McDaniel. And before them, we had on Jeanette Calder and Senator Marlon Morgan on that UHWI tax exempt.
Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.